Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner Studio, and with me today I have members of the Warren County Library Board. I have Veronica Ranieri, she's a board member, and have Erik Belk, he's the chairman of the WLBC, what is it?
WCLB.
WCLB. Yeah, we always give it an acronym or something shorter.
And we're happy to be here, Mike.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, you've been in the news lately, the whole library board has, and the county, and the scenario. So I thought what we'd do is first start off and telling us, what is the library board and why did you want to be involved in it? Because we had a lot of applicants and they picked you. So, and why did you want this abuse?
That actually is a very good question. So the beginnings of the Warren County Library Board is such that the Board of Supervisors, 60% of their discretionary budget is for the library. It's, I think, 1% of their total county budget, but it ends up taking up 30, 40, 50% of their time. So they didn't have the time to ask for and dig into the numbers to determine, is the vendor running the library? Are they being fiscally responsible with respect to spending the county taxpayer dollars? So they wanted to have an interim library board, and these are common. They're all over the place. They're all over Virginia.
I notice they're coded in the state code, so there must be a lot of them.
So they wanted to give us the responsibility to dig into those numbers, dig into the policies and procedures. And our goal is a fiscally responsible library that spends the taxpayer dollars wisely and continues to give excellent service to the citizens of the county.
So it's not about running the library.
I don't know how to run a library. but then again, I've been on boards of directors for very large nonprofit companies. I didn't know how to run their companies either, but I knew how to select people who knew how to run them.
Okay. So why did you want to be involved in this?
At this point, I have no idea. But looking back at it, so I retired back in May of last year. And it's not like I had nothing to do, but at the same time, I did have certain talents that I've developed over the course of my career that I thought could be spent doing this sort of thing. I spent many, many hours reviewing intense financial reports and budgets for various corporations. The nonprofits that I were on had a combined budget of well over $80 million, probably assets of 4 or 5 times that, certainly greater than $100 million. And so it took a lot, and I really loved doing it. I did. And that's what I was really looking forward to doing that here, but we haven't yet had the opportunity to do it, have we?
No.
Well, this too shall pass, is what they say. So what about you, Veronica? Why did you want to? You're a librarian by trade.
Really, and that kind of is the explanation of it all.
Sure.
I've worked in libraries since I was a junior in high school.
Right, it's in your blood. Then.
It is. I just love it. I have, I suppose, a talent for it, as well as then the master's degree, certified by the American Library Association. I've worked in my school library up in Michigan, where I grew up, in a local college library there. I've worked part-time from home online as an online reference librarian with OCLC, which is another big name in the library world. Yeah. And now for the last 8.5 years now, I've been at the Library of Congress, working in their cataloging policy division. And I love it. And I also love local libraries. Obviously, I'm deeply honored to be at the Library of Congress, but there's also something about your local home library, which is just, as we all agree, is beloved.
Sure.
And so when I am a relative newcomer here in Front Royal. When we moved here, immediately went in to Samuel's, got a library card for myself and for all my children, and took advantage of a variety of the things they offer, the mobile hotspot, because I was teleworking for Library of Congress, but our internet wasn't set up yet after we moved.
Right.
My library card.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I am a user.
I love it. And then what was this, last year? I think I saw that the Samuel's Library Incorporated was looking to bring on some more members. And so I thought, I really want to get involved in my local library, put down roots, help them. So I did apply. Now, sadly, they weren't interested because, as they told me later, they were looking for particular skill sets.
Right.
They've got the library stuff down pat, and I understand that. And so
you look through all their members, each one has like a different skill set.
Yes.
Yeah. They're looking for a lawyer. I mean, that's
thank you. Wrong.
Or an accountant. One of the other, I know some couple of those people have retired. So yeah.
But then when I saw that the county was setting up a library board to collaborate with them,
good.
I thought, well, maybe I can get involved in that instead.
Okay.
So I'm very, very thrilled to do that.
What's kind of surprised me about librarians is they have to have a master's degree. Like to work in an elementary school with kindergarten, you got to have a master's degree. Isn't that weird? I mean, I always thought that was.
It kills me that the physical therapists now need to have a doctorate.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
it's amazing. You know, all your pharmacists are doctorates.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Lawyers are doctorates.
I am a Juris Doctor. Yes. And like Veronica, I share her love of libraries. I actually talked to the Board of Supervisors about this. I grew up in Baltimore in a very hard area, kind of hard scrabble area.
Okay.
And I spent many, many, many days. Libraries were my refuge. The Enoch Pratt Free Library, they knew who I was as soon as I walked in the door.
Yeah.
And I was reading the books on architecture and bridge building and all these. I don't know why I never went into that, but that was my interest as a child anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
But they've always been important, and I've moved a little bit over the years, not too much, but I've belonged to libraries as small as 30,000 volumes, and the Enoch Pratt Library in downtown Baltimore has 1 million volumes just on local history. I mean, it's that size of a library. So I've seen libraries and seen how they operate as well. But I absolutely love libraries. In fact, at the time that I interviewed for the spot on the library board, I actually had 7 books out and 4 DVDs, a couple of which were already overdue.
I was going to ask.
I've contributed quite a bit to the fines.
Shame on you. So, obviously the library board is in the news, and you've been very vocal about things that you think the library has done inappropriately. And of course, I've got emails from everyone all over the country, it seems like. And so I didn't know if you want to address your feel, or do you still feel the same way, even though I looked at some of your things and I look at the code, and the code is really clear that contradict the things that you say. So that's why I just want to.
We can dig into that.
If you want to go through that, because I noticed the.
Where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with this. Let's start with the closed meeting thing.
Okay,
the closed meeting and the FOIA violations that I'll do it'll air quotes here violations, because one party says violation, one party says no, we didn't violate. So I was looking at the code, and this particular one, their explanation of what they did sounds perfectly fine and according to code, and you completely disagree.
Let's peel that back a little bit.
Okay.
Because they say that. Okay, so now they're finally admitting that they didn't do it in 3 business days. So we have that admission from the Board of Trustees.
But the code says they don't have to do that.
Does it? So they say that they had an emergency meeting. I'll ask you, where was the fire? Where was the fire? What made this an emergency? It happened on a Tuesday night. She had Wednesday. She had Thursday. She decides to call a meeting on Friday. She doesn't post it as a meeting on the Board of Trustees site, which is where they always post their meetings, right? She lists it as a room reservation on the calendar. That's another thing. There's no agenda. There's no topic list. And the only thing she said they're going to meet on were legal issues. Okay, so she didn't explain with any specificity what that was. Now, let's go to the meeting on Tuesday. They received the agenda when they walked in the room. That does not comply with FOIA either. In the end, we'll probably get here at some point. This doesn't. It's just a blip.
Yeah, it is just a blip.
But not for the reasons you think.
Okay, because I looked at the code, and first of all, it's not up for us or you to decide, me or you, to decide what's going to be an emergency meeting, because they don't have to have an agenda for emergency meeting, other than an overall view topic.
But they have to defend it. And is this a proper subject for an emergency meeting?
Well,
answer to that is no.
Well, that's your opinion, they say, and so
Right.
And,
Okay.
you know,
So it's not
just
that
like-
I'm wrong; it's that I hold a different opinion than they do.
Exactly. So you hold a different opinion, and you're stating things that are fact, and without anything saying, well, this could be an issue. But you know, you're pretty definite in your.
When you hide things from people like they did, when you refuse to come talk to us, you refuse to answer very basic questions, then what am I supposed to do? But I can infer from the facts that I see. The fact is they scheduled in 2 business days. The fact is they had no agenda. The fact is that they handed the agenda to people when they got there. They didn't even know, the trustees didn't even know why they were called to that meeting until they arrived.
Right.
And that is not the way a public entity that is receiving a substantial portion of their funding from the government should be acting. Well, we're supposed to be their partner, and this is the way they treat us. So that's number one. But let's dig a little bit more behind the FOIA thing and the Virginia Non-Stock Corporation Act. I'm sure you wanted to ask me about that in the 25 days. They're still subject to that, but let's move beyond that. So there's a really important part, and this I just discovered on Monday night after listening to Melly Hotek attempt to overcome my objections to what she did. There's a code 13.1-891 in the Virginia Code. What that says is, and let me see if I can get the words exactly right, but forgive me if I don't have it exactly right. It says that any amendment to the Articles of Incorporation does not affect any person's existing right. And as I've laid out in great detail with this, it's like, okay, say you have a car, right? Did you get a loan when you got the car?
No.
I did.
Okay.
I don't know. You probably did too. But when you buy a car and you get a loan, okay, you own the car.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no question. You own that car. You have possession of the car. You can use it.
pay
You can
for all the
drive it.
repairs,
You can park it. All of that's your responsibility as
Right.
the owner. You miss one payment, what happens? The bank now owns your car.
Right.
Okay, that is a contingency. They have a 100% vested interest in the future ownership of that car because that is the loan agreement. Now, when you file articles of incorporation with the state and you tell the state, you tell everybody who donates money to you, you tell the county of Warren that in the event that we dissolve this company, in the event that that happens, everything we have will be given to you for the exclusive purposes of a library. And I know that's something you want to talk about as well. So we have a 100% vested interest in any future distribution of those assets. They cannot change that. So even assuming that FOIA was met, even assuming that Non-Stock Corporation Act does not apply, all those things, they still did something that they cannot do. And essentially, it is a nullity because the law says it doesn't count. You cannot, by virtue of amending your articles of incorporation, change the existing rights of any person. And under Virginia law, corporations, government entities are persons.
Right. But see, now their advice from their lawyer, they come up with a different answer.
I don't know that they've ever looked at that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things they haven't looked at until I brought them up.
Yeah. Which is good. People should be bringing things up.
They should.
But like you say, a lot of these things can be adjusted. Now, when I read that, of course, having multiple corporations over the last 50 years, I've changed my articles of corporation multiple times. And it's just like you said, corporations are separate entities. Just like you want to change your will and you want to write your kids out of it, you have every right to do that. Even though they had a right before, now they don't have the right now because you made the choice because you're a separate choice person. And you can do that. Corporations are no different. They can change how they operate and they don't need permission from anybody to do that.
891 says otherwise. 891 says you cannot affect the existing rights of any other person. So if those rights are in existence,
but what you're claiming
can't change
is
it.
what's a right? That wasn't a right that they were going to get those assets.
Absolutely, Larry. It's in the Articles of Incorporation filed with the state.
Yeah.
The county has a right to rely upon that. They did, in fact, rely upon that. Any county that would not rely upon that would be idiots.
So here's the other side of the coin. So what people are saying is, well, the only reason you're bringing this up because you want those assets.
No, we actually want the library to be run here in, well, I don't want to own the assets. we want the assets to stay here in Warren County. What they did, and you might want to touch upon this as well, is that there's a clause that says, in the event of our dissolution, those assets remain in Warren County exclusively for the purpose of a library.
Let's go
That's
back.
what it said.
Right.
Okay.
Let's go back one more thing, and I think people are forgetting. The corporations can keep only if you dissolve it, but that corporation, just because it's not physically doing that job in that building, this corporation still exists, and they still can own the assets.
Let's go to prohibited acts under Title 57. It says that you
I knew
cannot.
a lawyer would bring this up.
You cannot use an asset for anything other than its solicited purpose.
Right. So they
if
could,
you
but
solicit,
they could open another library somewhere else.
They
And they would have
potentially
every
could.
right to keep those assets.
And those assets, those rights, they cannot divest. They cannot strip Warren County of the rights to those future assets. If the next entity goes under,
Okay, so what
those
you're
come to
looking
Warren
at,
County.
the way it said was Warren County, so that could mean a lot of things. That could just mean the people that live here. We're Warren County. Doesn't say the government of Warren County or the Board of Supervisors. It says Warren County. So
the county of Warren.
If I took, say I was them, and I decided, well, I want to start another library somewhere else in town or the county. I have another building that I own. I'll just move all my assets over there. Warren County still has full use of all these assets.
So no, it's an improper interpretation of that law. But I'll accept it.
But you understand what I'm saying? But they're not dissolving the corporation. They're just not.
You can churn this stuff, and they can churn this stuff all they want.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that you can't do these things. You cannot divest Warren County of its rights in the future ownership of those assets.
Well, what you're saying is the Board of Supervisors or the County of Warren.
The County of Warren.
But the agreement doesn't use the word County of Warren. It just says for the use of Warren County.
Something I really want to bring up, though.
I'm just curious. I mean, this is just.
It's not. You read what I said. That's
Right.
not actually what it says.
Okay.
And this is relevant. We're talking about what words are or are not
Sure.
in the various versions. And I'm not a lawyer, thank goodness.
You've been
goodness.
staying a Holiday Inn Express, right?
Right.
She's married to one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I can read. And the first version of the dissolution clause also specified not only Warren County, whether that's the government or not, I won't touch that,
sure.
but it said the assets must be used exclusively for the purposes of a library, a free public library. In the second version, that limitation is no longer there, and I'm not accusing
Similar educational.
just education.
Doesn't say similar. It just says charitable or
Just
educational purpose.
Well, I think I
educational.
got a copy of it, and I think it does say similar. But we can go on to that.
But why? So,
So first
I'm
of all,
not
it goes-
accusing anyone, but I'm
No.
wondering why would they
I think they
remove
felt-
the word library?
Why change
Why?
it?
I don't know. Maybe it's because people feel threatened and they decide to, how people pull back on their horse.
Well, and
So
that's
boils
another
back-
thing.
Well, it just pulls back to the first question is, why would we want that? We have a library of the year that the county loves and adores, you included.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
all of a sudden now, you're implying that we're just going to take all that away from you. We're going to have somebody else do it because we think you're doing a bad job. That's the implication. I mean, that's the.
I'm asking questions.
Right.
That's the thing. I want information, and I would like the opportunity to ask these questions, and they won't talk to us.
Well-
I came into this really hoping to collaborate with them,
Sure. Well-
work with them, and we have just been denied that opportunity over and over and over again.
Well, I'll bring that point up. At your meeting, you won't take any public comments. People can't come and ask you questions. They have to send them in writing. But then on the other hand, you turned around and said, we've summoned you to come and talk to us, and you won't. But they said, well, send us the questions. We'll answer it in an email. So isn't it what's good for you? Isn't that good for them?
No, you were probably there Tuesday night, and you saw the type of what happens at these meetings when you just open it up.
I know.
I opened up. I did, in
We
fact,
tried.
against my better judgment, opened it up to comments, and immediately we had people acting out.
Yeah.
And I understand they're emotionally attached to
Yeah.
the library. They've been fed a lot of misinformation about what our intent is. Our intent is only to help to assure that we have a library here that is vital, that is has vitality. It's not vulnerable to being removed from us, because when you look at the change that they made, there's no other purpose for changing that, is that they recognize that, oh no, if we dissolve, we can't give this to somebody else. We have to give it back to Warren County.
Right.
And it says, to the County of Warren for the exclusive purposes of a free library system.
Right.
So there's no question. Why change that in order to do that? There's only two really conclusions you could take. One is that, yeah, they really intend to take it away from the people. The other is they think that this is a poison pill, like a dangerous game of chicken that they want to play, to say that you can't get rid of us because if you do, we're going to keep the assets and we'll send them someplace else. So I can't see any other conclusion.
Well, and what you just mentioned, the same thing. This is what corporations do when they feel like they're going to have a hostile takeover. They come up with a poison pill. That's what they do.
But you can do that. You can say, okay, I'm going to give my executives a $2 million bonus in the event that we're taken over. You can do that. You can't change your articles of incorporation to take away somebody's right that's already existing. You can't do that. You cannot repurpose your assets for a purpose other than the solicited purpose for those charitable assets.
Well, let's go back to what maybe the underlying condition that, when I say people, friends of the library, not the corporation, but the public, look at this as a backdoor. You didn't get the books out of the library because, you did submit books.
I did,
And,
yes.
so you basically lost that battle. So now this library board is another battle by 4 of the people on the Board of Supervisors trying to come through the kitchen door to get what they want. And that's how that's public perception.
Yeah, so let me go ahead. I'll start and I'll let you
But
finish.
am I right?
No.
As public perception goes.
Public
I
perception,
understand.
based on a misapprehension of what's going on. So let's talk about the fact that of all 5 members of the board, I am the only one who's submitted requests that items be removed from the children's section. I didn't advocate for banning books. I advocated for taking them out because they were not age appropriate.
Right.
Those things are out there. The Save Samuels people have published what I had said they got that information. I'd recommend people go out and read it. Read what I said,
Right.
not what people are saying that I said.
Right.
Actually read it.
That's why I invited you in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So I have responsibility. We talked about this earlier by email. Is that the fact that there are people out there attacking us or at least attacking me because I'm Catholic. In fact, I think the funniest statement from the meeting last Tuesday, as I'm walking out, a guy yells at me, "You need to go to confession." Like, you're right. Not for that reason, though. It was the day
And that
before
brings it up.
Ash
Now
Wednesday.
that's-
But
go
let me
ahead.
go ahead and finish this thought, which I just lost the train of.
Yeah. Old people.
Old people, you get old retired people, you just can't help it. So as a parent, my Catholic faith influences everything I do, both professionally and privately. As a parent, I have an obligation to my children. I feel I have an obligation to my society in which I live, and I'm going to act on those, using the forms provided by the library for exactly that purpose.
Right.
Okay, so they understand there's a purpose where people may ask these things.
Sure.
My responsibility, my role as chairman of the library board is completely separate and apart from that. It is a secular role. Although my Catholic faith is going to influence me to the extent that I'm going to treat people fairly, I'm going to listen, I'm going to respond, and do. So we get back to, and this is a way of circling back to your question about not allowing people to speak, that I love having these types of conversations. I will sit down with anybody and have this kind of conversation. I'm not going to have somebody sit across the table from me and scream at me, which is what we're getting. So I'll turn over to you if you have anything to add.
Well, to circle back in another
Yeah.
direction, back to the question of the book recalls, it's driven me a little crazy that people are saying all the people on the Warren County Library Board are book banners, blah blah blah, and I would really ask everyone to go look at the list of people who submitted the recall request or request for removal of the book. My name is not on there. In fact, Mr. Belk's name is the only one from our library board who is on there. And so I would really encourage everybody on Facebook and in news articles and everything to check the sources, look at the names.
But there are members of the Board of Supervisors that are on that list, and they're the ones that appointed you. So
Who's on there from the Board of Supervisors? Who submitted a
Jay Butler
request?
is one, and I think
I don't
then
recall.
so-and-so had his wife do it. Well, I can't remember which one of the other two had his wife submit the forms. I think.
That's up to her, isn't
Are
it?
we
No, but
saying
I'm
wives only obey their
No, no.
husbands?
Well,
they don't act on their
I'm
own?
just saying, put her name on it. And that's just hearsay. No, that's just
Careful.
hearsay. But what I'm saying is the idea that you can see how the perception would be that, okay, the Board of Supervisors, now the library did respond to the things that you mentioned, changed things. They changed the library cards
Yeah.
for kids. They put the age. They moved books around.
We're
They-
done.
They eliminated some books. And
We're done.
Yeah.
and that process
this
has
is
been
not an issue.
refined. So in the future, should never be an issue. People got an issue. And here's my opinion. Now, people have complained to me, oh, there's pornography in the library. And I said, did you go to the sheriff and file a complaint? Because it's against the law to have pornography in the library. Have you filed a complaint? No. Well, then, until you file a complaint, there'll be no investigation. So that was my answer to people.
And I'm not aware of a single person, of course, I probably wouldn't be aware, but that anyone else has filed anything in the last 18 months regarding
Right.
the library and asking to make sure the books are age appropriate. The library stepped up, did the right thing.
Sure.
We're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not an issue. Now, there are people who are churning this in order to create an issue and to create this kind of fear and distrust. But why? All we're asking is that they come before us, open the books, be transparent with us, talk to us, let us know we need line item things. The packet of information they sent that constitutes their budget is just a very high level. We need this much for salaries. We need this much for benefits. It doesn't work that way. Not in the real world. Not where I came from. I mean, we would get reports of employee counts, employee positions, what the salary levels were, all of that together in one package, and have somebody say, "Look on the website. Everything is there." Number one, it's not true, and number one, it presumes a bit too much.
Of course, the other thing, when they say that, they said, if there's nothing you can't find, send us an email, we'll give you the answer.
That's why you are a publisher and a journalist, right? I'm right on both of those things, correct?
One of those things, maybe a reporter more than a journalist. I try not to put my opinion in there.
You know as well as I do that answers to questions beget questions. Okay? And those
Yeah, they never
answers
end.
beget, and it never ends. So what you end up in, either we forego the opportunity for follow-up questions, like you're having with us right now, this back and forth, or we get into this endless back and forth in email, which is not an efficient use of your time or mine. So come to us, talk to us, let's get it on the table once.
Well, and I think, obviously, there's some sort of litigation going on, and I'm not sure what the details of that is. But on the same time, their MOA says they only report to the Board of Supervisors. They don't report to the library board.
You're referring to the library funding agreement. So the library funding agreement, it doesn't quite actually say that, but moving beyond that, even if that were true, we're not talking about funding under the library funding agreement. We're talking about something that happens after the library funding agreement. The law has changed. We are that entity that's responsible for this. Come talk to us. Because if they don't talk to us, there is nothing that we can present to the Board of Supervisors. I made that point last Tuesday. There's nothing we can present to them. It's like, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy on their part. Oh, they're trying to shut us down. No, we're not. We're trying to have an open dialogue with you, and you are refusing, you're hiding, and you won't come talk to us. Just come talk to us.
Well, it would seem to me the answer to that would be that since the idea is that they are only to report to the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Supervisors would send them a letter and tell them to report to the library board, and then that would give them permission to go and permit, you know what I'm saying?
Well, we were
have
both
they
there
done-
when you
Did that
heard
happen?
Dr. Jameson's statement at the 2 weeks ago.
Board of Supervisors meeting, he said, I will not consider any budget
what I
request
was gonna bring up
unless
It
it comes through the Warren County Library Board.
All right.
So they've
ready.
been given
So you're
the
just a-
permission and the direction to talk to us.
Okay. You assume that. I don't think must be but they need to work it out. It's just like anything. You gotta, after you throw enough stuff against the wall, eventually something sticks and it'll all work out. But I think budget time is crunch time, and the time is ticking. So I think somewhere, if the library board, it's my opinion, if the library board wants this, if that's the reason they want, then maybe you need to have compromise and get together, and not be forget
I'm
bickering.
not sure what compromises
I don't
more
know.
could be offered. We've issued invitations to at least 2 of our meetings,
Well,
offering
that's-
to change the day and the
Yeah.
time
But
to
see,
accommodate.
that comes across as summing them to report instead
Well,
of
considering that we also are subject to FOIA, right? And we have to, if more than 3 of us are together,
Sure.
or 3 or more of us are together, we have to give sufficient notice, blah, blah, blah. How else can we approach them if not in one of our official
Right.
meetings?
Well, we just need. Sounds like we need to get somebody in there to mediate this thing and get this thing going because, and again, their legal advice says one thing,
Right.
his legal advice is saying another, and somewhere someone needs to come together because you're going to run out of budget time, and then things happen that you don't really want it to happen. So, or rubber meets the road.
You know, I've been involved in literally thousands of cases. I was a trial attorney for quite a long time, and everything from a split fingernail, literally, to a cases worth $35 million.
Right.
And I can count on one hand the number of times that people said, "Nope, we're not going to sit down and talk."
Right.
Count on one
Eventually
hand.
that happens. It doesn't always happen in the beginning, but it eventually does happen. So the question is, how would you resolve this situation
You know,
without
So-
it being feeling like you're going to be summoned to come before the king, to kiss his ring? I mean, that's really that's the attitude that people think that the board is doing.
we've run into a couple of things here that are developing. One is that the secrecy and the hiding behind the litigation. I mean, if you're going to put all your eggs in the litigation basket, then just tell it, as she has, she said, we're not going to talk to you. I'm not sure what else I can do there. But I also think the attempt to take away Warren County's future rights, their refusal to be open and honest and upfront with us with the financials, the refusal to meet with us, all of that is very damaging to the public trust. It's very damaging to the amount of trust that we have that they could be an effective partner going forward. If you're going to hold meetings the way they did, not involve us in those decisions, if you're going to make changes to take that stuff away and strip Warren County of its rights and litigate cases, how much of a trustworthy partner are you at that point? So they have an uphill battle at this point, in my mind. You're going to have to show us not only or do you deserve to run this, but that you can effectively govern based upon what I see. They've made a lot of very poor decisions, and if this were outside of this area, I'd have to really question whether they're capable of continuing that role. Not to say it's impossible, but the first step is coming to meet with us and undoing what they did, because that really violates the public trust.
So what do you feel like there's none of the other, what do they call NGOs, is that what they're called? That other organizations that provide services to the county aren't required to do their budget like that or to submit the way that that the board wants the library to do.
Anybody who wants to run this library will respond to our questions. I don't care who they are.
Right, but how about what's your non-library issues? Do you think every organization should have a stricter, audit of what's going? The county can't even get audited. So, their line item. Have you ever tried to look through the county budget for line items? It's a problem. I mean,
Sure.
This is like the pot
This
calling
is-
the kettle black.
Yeah, this is designed to end that. That's why we're here, is to end the mystery surrounding these things. And I can tell you, I don't care who, if it's Samuel's Library Inc. or if it's some other entity that's going to come in. If we want to see the books, they're going to show us the books.
Right.
Now, of course, if somebody else let's say it's a for-profit company, there's going to be profit built in and all that. No, we're not entitled to that.
Right.
But that's a different situation than dealing with a nonprofit.
I know in my own company, if I want to look for a line item, it's just click it, there it is, all the detail, everything I put in. And the county, if I FOIA something from the county, it takes I get this FOIA bill for hours of research. When it's a line item issue, just click the button and it should give me, in 30 seconds, give me every information back for the last 20 years. And you can't get that.
Yeah, and we shouldn't have to go through FOIA to get information from
shouldn't.
someone who's
And we shouldn't have to
receiving money.
pay money to do that for any
Yeah.
government agency, but they've got that down, and I think that it's a issue that's beyond the library that needs to be addressed as well. So maybe this will be one of those things.
And I hate the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing. I never wanted to be here. If it hadn't been for them failing to come to the table in the first place, we wouldn't even be here. I would never have looked for this and found it. And continuing to peel back the layers of that onion and keep finding more, and it's very concerning to me.
Well, like you say, you are aggressive because of your.
Well,
I don't want to use that word. Maybe
I know,
determined.
I have a courtroom voice.
Yes.
Okay, and people take that as aggressive. But when I am talking to people, this is me. I am not aggressive in that. But when people shield things from me, yeah, that makes me look harder.
Right. Yeah. I'll tell you a little. I'll give you a disclosure. The American Trial Lawyers Association was one of my clients for 15 years,
okay.
and so
ATLA.
and it's just to let you know, I actually had a court. I had to take them to court, and they hired They tried to do it in house. They hired a big law firm in Washington. It's about rights of materials and things. Mm-hmm. And I hired this guy up in Winchester for $500. He was like an old country lawyer guy. So I won the case.
Good for
Never
you.
had to go to court. It was all settled out of court. But I don't know how much, but they spent more money than what they owed me.
Oh,
to
the
do
first
it.
phone call they made was more money than what they owed you,
So,
probably.
but I do understand the mindset of trial lawyers, and because their money is in your pocket. I mean, that's pretty much how they work. So they can be determined.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly, I don't want this. I'm spending, it's not exactly how I intended to spend my retirement. I'm putting 40, 50 hours in a week doing this
Here's
stuff.
my suggestion, just from an outsider looking in, and I've gone through a lot of negotiations with people. I think that the library board, and since you're the head of it, is stop talking about what they did wrong, and they stop talking about what they did wrong, and go back to what the real issue is. If it's not about closing the library to a new vendor, it's about we just want to get the numbers worked out and look at the budget. And I think if we stop talking about the other two things, that that shouldn't affect any quote litigation that's supposedly going to happen or may not happen after May date, may not even happen. So
Litigation's not even with us, so
Right.
I don't see what the problem
but you understand where I'm coming from. It's this person's calling this and this person. All they're doing is just getting into a conflict that's not going to resolve the real issue. And the real issue is let's get our budget passed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I sent an email to Melody Hotek on Wednesday of last week. She responded to me Monday morning and said, no, she will not come to see us, and again, citing the litigation. So I essentially said, okay, we're ready when you are. So the ball's in her court.
Okay.
I am not going to send her any more emails inviting her to our meetings. We will schedule meetings. If she will appear, she should let me know so we can put her on the agenda. But I won't be inviting her to any further meetings at this point.
So she has an open invitation. If
She has an open
wishes.
invitation.
Yes.
So, I think this court date's now in May 25, and I don't know really. Some of you've seen whatever the paperwork is on it, but again, it doesn't affect the library board at all. It's just with the Board of Supervisors. So.
Right. Again, it's over the creation of this board, but that doesn't excuse non-performance with the board now.
All right, it sounds like that. And what's the next topic we want to talk about?
Peace in the Middle East.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
So, like you said, I just wanted to let people understand. Obviously, you've expressed your opinion
Right.
pretty strongly, and I think they've expressed to me their opinion is 180 degrees out from your opinion, and they think they did nothing wrong. But at the bottom line is, like you said, is it just really a moot point? It's just a matter of we can correct that with the stroke of a pen.
And again, to leave you with the idea that, again, I was the only one who filed requests with the library. They acted appropriately. We're done. It's unfair. It's really inappropriate for them to accuse any of us of being book banners.
Right.
But most of all, to accuse Veronica and other people on the board who had nothing to do.
Well, we have this issue, and again, it's reflecting on your board from the Board of Supervisors, because we have people called the Group of Four, that have, and we have the, what's the word they're using? Maybe Christendom Crusade, Crusaders, and then we have the Young Republicans, and we have, there's kind of like, you don't know who is who, because they hide behind some sort of anonymous thing.
Well, for what it's worth, when I interviewed with the Board of Supervisors for this position, books were not mentioned at all.
Okay.
It was exclusively, what do you know about library operations? How would you evaluate expenditures on different areas of the library operations? That was it. Books were not mentioned ever.
We're not, and we haven't mentioned it and have no intention of doing so.
not.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, I kind of read between the lines on when the presentations are done. They give the impression that it's strictly about, financial. Mm-hmm. But there's always that little, thing on your shoulder here telling you, well, they're trying, do something in a way around the back door. And I think we need to overcome that.
Yeah.
But then if it ends up being true, don't you, the old saying is, you need to kind of protect your back end, protect your flank, because sometimes that's where you get attacked. People come on straight on. Everybody says that's good, but, I think the feeling is, yeah, I can agree with that, but based upon our previous experience, maybe not with you, but with the board over the period of a couple of years, they're looking at, we think that there's, this isn't a new issue.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
so we're
They've
completely
been flat funded for several years,
and we're completely independent of the Board of Supervisors. We don't answer to them. All we do, our job is to set the budget, and so we take that job very seriously.
Well, you're like the Planning Commission. You recommend it, but they'll do what they want.
That's true too.
Yeah.
That's
You can recommend all you want, and yet they may not agree with
That's
you.
true.
but it starts with us. So Ms. Hotek, come visit us. Bring whoever you want to discuss any particular topic. We are happy to discuss. I'm happy to sit down with people. I offered to. There's a particular detractor who likes to attack me on Facebook, and I've been very polite to her, and I said, "Oh, why don't I sit down with you on Friday, and you can ask me anything you want. I'll give you any response." And she's like, "No, So I'll talk to anybody, but opening the meetings, I'm not ready to do that because of the antics that have been played, and
Well, the last
especially
Board of Supervisors meeting, they, said, I'm going to clear the room, yeah. And people are passionate about their library.
Yeah.
They are, and that's a good thing. I'm passionate about it as well. I'm passionate about the library. I'm not passionate about a particular vendor that's running it. But I want that library to be strong. I want it to be a part of this community and to exist for generations to come.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, it sounds like, regardless of, they give me I looked up the codes that you say, and to me, it reads the opposite of what you say. But again, that's all that's his lawyer coming out, right? And, when they form an opinion, they can't admit to go back and say, well, maybe I was, but you have done that.
I have done. I've taken apart what she's said, that there was no emergency here, and handing out the agenda. Why keep it secret from your board members? That was ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
at any rate, we are where we are. It
is,
doesn't matter anyway because they couldn't do what they attempted to do. It's 891 makes it really clear that you cannot affect the existing rights of other persons.
Well, I think part of the issue that I speculate is why the time takes, there's a day or two, when you try to talk to your lawyer and you're waiting for that phone call to come back, and that doesn't happen. It's not like I call you now, answer the phone. It takes, then I got to research it, and I got to run up the hours and look at it, and a couple of days go by and say, I think you need to do this. And so that's how I look at why it takes 2 or 3 days to set up the meeting, but not knowing what it was. But that's their choice. I mean, it's an emergency meeting. They declare what an emergency is, and there's no minutes in a closed session. So they do have to come out and say what they did, and that holds them to that, topic that they talked on.
But again, changing your articles of incorporation is not a topic permissible in a closed session. It's not permissible. There are you can talk about litigation. You can talk about. I think there's 7 different things you can talk about.
They didn't change that in a closed session.
They talked about it in a closed session. That's what you can't do.
But see, you don't know that because there's no minutes of the meeting.
And there's no minutes of the meeting afterwards. What did they actually discuss?
Yeah.
Who said what? We don't know.
We don't know. So,
and because
we're all speculating.
Well.
And that's the thing. I would love for them to come and talk to us,
right?
So that to end the speculation,
right.
just have a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I think we'll leave that an open invitation, and I think eventually it'll come to that. It may be after May 25, but
you want to invite me and you want to invite Ms. Hotek? I'll sit here.
Yeah, that sounds.
You want to be the mediator?
Yeah,
you can be the mediator. We'll do it live with the video.
Yeah, well, I would do that, and I'll mention it to them and see if they'll come on. And that's not an official meeting because you can do that with 2 people just to hash out their personal opinions and trying to see where people are. And what we want to try to do is come to a meeting of the minds and saying, and like I say, some of this stuff you bring up, yes, they didn't do this, they didn't, but you can do that over again. Say, oh, well, if it's supposed to be 25 days, you didn't do that. Well, they can have another meeting, give 25 days, and have the exact same.
That's true.
Results.
But at least people would have the option, would have notice of it, and would be able to participate.
Regardless of where you say that's not proper or not, but whatever change they wanted to make, and it's happened with the town council, it's happened with the Board of Supervisors, they didn't have a quorum, somebody pointed it out, and then later they come back and did the meeting over again, had the same conclusion that they had before, but they had to go through it. So they possibly could even do that. So really, that's a moot point in a way, as far as the days.
Then it also begs the question, where was the emergency?
Well, but
you want to redo. You would redo it later. Where's the emergency?
then it wouldn't be an emergency meeting.
Right. It wasn't the first time, but that's
right. But like I said, that's apples and oranges. But I think it doesn't really, if it doesn't really get down to the nuts and bolts of what you want to try to accomplish, and that's about the financials and the budget.
Sit down with us. So thank you for inviting us today.
I want to make sure we covered everything.
No, I'm glad.
I think we did.
I think so. Well, I'm sure people will watch this and disagree with it, but I think that you're open to receiving questions.
I am.
And I think people should stop doing it on Facebook.
Yes.
And just coordinate it. And again, their opinions matter. I mean, they're adamant about the library. We all love the library.
Yes.
They love the people that are there. That's what makes a library is the people, not the books, you know. And I think they've done a good job. Most people think that. Maybe they have some weak points. We need to fix that like they did with the book.
It's both. Yeah. And some of the things we have, kicked back and forth is, their collection is aging. Their collection is aging, and there are probably books on the shelf that haven't been checked out in 10 years.
Right.
And there really needs to be a modernization effort. How can we help them make that modernization effort to bring their collection up to where it should be?
Some of those books that people wanted to get banned, I asked them, and she said, some of these books haven't been checked out in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
but they didn't want to ban them. They wanted them removed
removed.
From the
slip
make
of the
them
tongue, right?
age appropriate.
But you know what I'm saying? So some of the books hadn't even been checked out.
Yeah.
Now, after this started, they checked out a lot, Some of them didn't come back.
Yeah.
But anyway, hearsay, right? But I appreciate you coming in. You're open, and I think if people would just talk it out and get past the points that really doesn't make that much difference, and let's get back to the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish.
That's all we want.
And I think we should all come to the table and do that, and ignore the other points that are, may or may be. We can correct those. All those points you mentioned are easily corrected.
Right.
And
they are.
And like you said, now I think I said something to Zach at the county, just FYI. One of the meetings we went to, it was posted, but there was no time and there was no location on it. We looked everywhere. I called down there, said, "Where's the meeting? Where's the meeting?" It's on the website. I said, "It's not on the website." Mark was there. He kept saying, "There's no time and date." So we called Zach, "Where is it?" "Well, let me check." And a few minutes later, it was up on the website. Yeah. But so it does happen. I mean, where things don't. We thought it was on there. We thought it was in the right place, but you didn't do it personally. Somebody else was responsible for posting it. Yeah. So that does happen. And again, okay, we'll correct it. We'll do it some other way, But and it brings up weak links in our system. So we need maybe the end result is we've come up with a better way to do it. And I think that's what we all want.
Good.
Agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. And again, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. And thanks.
Thank you. Veronica.
But I see you sitting over there on the board. I think you need to be closer to Erik. So yes,
she does a fantastic job, and
it's hard. And I tell you, not just you, but people that serve on our boards and commissions that we have, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time to do it right. And so,
it does. And I've calculated what my hourly wage is, and it still is zero.
Yeah, yes. It is. I know. Yeah. It all rounds up to zero. I know. I've been on a lot of boards and things, and it's like running a newspaper. It's a lot of hours for very little. But I hope the results, if you're into it and you participate in the board, I think the rewards are there. Any of the boards, maybe not the library board, but the rest of them.
But we move past this.
I know. Let's move it on, and I appreciate it. And come back in a couple weeks or month, and we'll see how we resolve. Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.